Hello, welcome to my preview of the 2025 Silk Road Mountain Race. By the time you see this video, I should hopefully be in Osh for the start. I'm racing myself, so pre-recording this, and I thought I'd have a little look at the route and some of the riders to look out for. So this is the route, starting in Osh and finishing it in Karakol. It's got some new sections and some Silk Road Mountain Race classics, some of which I've ridden before. So I've got some footage to show you just to sort of illustrate what the riders will be taking on. And then also I'll check out some of the riders who are racing. But first, I've got a sponsor for this preview, POC Helmets. Or POC Helmets and Glasses. They've sponsored this video. They've got a 20% discount code for anyone who clicks on the link. I'll put that on the screen or down in the description. I'll be using this Ventral Light helmet for the Silk Road Mountain Race. It's basically the lightest one they have in the range. A little under 200 grams, depending on which size you get. And I use this for the Hellenic Mountain Race as well. Basically, super lightweight. Kind of forget you've got it on your head. Super comfy on the climbs. Lots of ventilation, which is kind of what you want when you're going uphill for many hours at a time, as happens on the Silk Road Mountain Race. So yeah, that is the POC Ventral. Great support from POC, so yeah, check them out, and thanks very much. So before I get onto the race route, what I thought I'd do is I'd highlight a couple of riders to keep an eye out on this year's edition of the race. This is not going to be an exhaustive list. There's quite a few riders that could certainly be challenging for the top 10 and the top 5, but I've picked out some kind of, I guess, podium contenders. If you want to listen to the podcast, that should be out by the time you see this video. The Ultra Escape podcast with Becky Waters, we're going to discuss in more depth the various riders taking part. So listen to that if you want a bit more of an insight. But in the meantime, I've just picked out a couple of favourites. So first up on the women's side of things, Megan Hakkinen. She has to be the favourite for this race. So she's already completed the Atlas Mountain Race and the Hellenic Mountain Race this year. She was second fastest woman in the Atlas Mountain Race, top 20 overall there. And she was the fastest woman in the Hellenic Mountain Race. She's aiming for the whole set this year. So yeah, she's got really good experience. She's like ridden the Tour Divide and things like that. So she'll be pretty comfortable in these remote mountains. So yeah, definitely got to be keeping an eye on Megan. Next up, Carlotta Schumacher. The reason I've picked her is, she's a top rider, but she's actually cycled there from Greece after the Hellenic Mountain Race. She's had a hell of an adventure if you've been following her on social media, so she'll be very well versed in the terrain and well adapted to the hardships of life in Kyrgyzstan. She might be a bit tired after that long journey, mind you, so we'll see how she goes on the overall journey, but yeah, definitely one to watch in the women's field. Over on the men's side of the field, I've basically picked three riders who I think are pretty much going to be the riders battling for the podium. So first up, I have to start with Alex McCormack. He's already won the Atlas Mountain Race this year and the Hellenic Mountain Race. He has to be probably the top favourite. He's not raced Silk Road Mountain Race before. Might be slightly unproven over kind of this duration. He seems to excel at the shorter races so far, but is one of the strongest guys in the field. So he just has to have that favourite status, and I'm sure he'll be able to cope with these conditions. So yeah, Alex is probably the number one favourite, I would have thought. However, Anatol Nemi, he's really been pushing Alex basically in these races. He was a very close second in the Hellenic Mountain Race. He was right up there in the Atlas Mountain Race. Again, done all three of these, or the first two in the series of these races. He's spent a bit of time in Kyrgyzstan already, so he'll be sort of adapted and used to kind of the conditions, altitude, and basically kind of bad food. That's kind of summarizes the Silk Road Mountain Race. So yeah, Anatol is. I'm pretty sure we'll see a great battle with Anatol and Alex. And another, we can't really say wild card. Robin Gempele, he just totally smashed the record on the Tour Divide. He finished it pretty quickly, and it's normally a bit of a question mark over finishing Tour Divide and then going straight onto the Silk Road Mountain Race. But I think he finished the Tour Divide so quickly that basically he didn't go too many days, over 10 days. He was just under 12 days for the record. And for me, doing these races, up to 10 days, you don't do mega damage to your bodies. it's when you go over 10 days you really start to smash yourself, which I think is why it's kind of made doing the double a bit difficult. But Robin was pretty close to 10 days. I'm pretty sure he would have recovered fairly quickly after Tour Divide. He's got that in his legs. Again, unproven in Kyrgyzstan. There's a lot of elements that you can't necessarily, you can train for, but it's harder to. Basically kind of the food, not getting sick, the altitude, the conditions. But Robin's an experienced athlete. He lives in Switzerland, had plenty of time up in the mountains. And again, I'm pretty sure he'll be up there battling for the podium and probably the win as well. So that's my kind of like top picks, I guess. Listen to the podcast for a bit more of an in-depth list. Let's get on to the route. So I'll just put this on full screen so you can see what's happening. This is a bit of a new section on the route. So essentially the route starts in Osh. I'll just put it on Google Maps. It makes it a little bit clearer. So you can see Osh here. So this is the start city. It's the second city of Kyrgyzstan. Bishkek in the north is the main city, and that's where a lot of the riders will have to travel to in order to get there. I'm cycling from Bishkek to Osh for the start, or certainly most of the way, over some of the classic mountains in this northern section. But the route is a bit more southern this year, with some new sections. So the first checkpoint is at Lenin Peak Base Camp. Now to get there, let me just put you on the smaller screen here so you can see the passes. So there's two fairly big passes. So the passes are Koi Jul and Shiman Bel, which is these couple here. So they're kind of, from what I gather, they're not the hardest passes in the world, but I've not ridden there before. I can't comment too much on that particular section. And then the first checkpoint is at Lenin Base Camp. So Lenin Peak is a pretty massive mountain. You can probably just see here, if I put the terrain on Riber GPS here, it might give you a pretty good idea. You can see it's kind of in a high valley here. And then Lenin Peak is one of these big peaks here, one of the biggest peaks in Kyrgyzstan. I think it might even be the highest peak in Kyrgyzstan. Riders do a bit of an out and back to this first checkpoint here. You can see it's pretty high elevation, 11,000 feet, which works out, it's about 3,300 meters. And then if we kind of just if we hold this level on here, you can see that's 3,300. So there's a lot of elevation around that 300 of the 3,000 mark. That's probably about 3,000 there if you look at the bottom screen, and it just tells you how high this particular race is. It's maybe not the toughest in terms of out and out climbing, but this edition, and a characteristic of the Silk Road Mountain Race is just exposure to altitude. But this one has a lot of altitude and a lot of time above 3,000 meters. I think in 2023 when I did it, I slept above 3,000 at or above 3,000 meters. I think 5 nights out of the 7 I was on the road. That's the kind of thing that catches you out, and resupply is a bit tricky too. There's not an awful lot. First checkpoint, Lenin Base Camp, and then there's this big section here, and basically there's a number of passes, and then there's quite a big hiker bike, which I believe is this section here up to the over this pass here. I think it's Suyek Pass. Again, I've not done this section. This is new to the race, this bottom section, so I'm not over familiar with it. But there's a long hiker bike. It's supposedly 30k. That's from Nelson, the race organizer. I take everything Nelson says with a slight pinch of salt. He reckons it's kind of animal tracks, where a lot of these high valleys, the locals take their herds up high in summer and then bring them back down in winter. So a lot of these kind of are like goat tracks, things like that. So supposedly it's a 30k hike. I've talked to Nelson about it. He reckons maybe the fastest riders might get it done in 6-7 hours. But the race manual says a day. So make that what you will. I did a 30k hike the other week, just hiking in South Wales in the UK, and it was 8 hours for just over 30k. But then you've got to push a bike and you've got altitude. So I'm thinking probably 8-9 hours hike for me. I'm not the fastest hiker. Some people might be quicker, some people might be slower, but that's basically a day without any resupply as well. So that's going to be a long section. And then you hit a section I'm a bit more familiar with. This is the Chinese border road, and the next section is Kelsu. So this is a classic Silk Road mountain race checkpoint. Again, high altitude, you can see on the profile at the bottom, once you're over that pass, you don't really drop down for a while. And after CP2, you've got the classic, the Soviet road. And this is a section that's featured in many of the Silk Road mountain races over the year. I've been over it myself, so I thought I'd just show you a little bit of a video from 2023 over the Soviet road. And essentially it's a massive hiker bike, and you can see down in the distance, just round to the right hand side, there's the checkpoint on the banks of this lake. The video probably doesn't give it justice as to the steepness, but it's a hike. There's no way you're riding up that. Probably takes about an hour or so. It's not horrendous, but you're just at altitude. As you can see in 2023, it was beautiful and sunny, but it gets very cold very quickly up there. So if you're going to do it at night, it can be pretty grim. If it's bad weather, I'm sure it could be pretty horrendous. You're just exposed. So yeah, but that's what the Silk Road's all about. It's not just cycling. It's probably like an outdoorsman's race as much as anything. Mountain experience. I wouldn't say survival skills, because you don't want to be surviving. Looking after yourself in hostile environments is what it's all about. And then this section, basically you come off the ridge and you drop down to Narin, which is down here. This is probably about the halfway mark, and it's pretty much the best resupply you'll get on the whole race route. It's the biggest city, or a small town maybe. There's a hotel there. You might get some kind of Western food. There's always rumours you may be able to get a pizza there. Which is good calories, are hard to come by on the Silk Road mountain race. So the section just running after the Soviet road out to Narin, or before the passes where you drop down to Narin, and also this section here leading up to the checkpoint, they look a little something like this. So this again is video I shot in 2023. So you can see you're pretty exposed up there, high mountains all around. This is sort of around the 3,000 meter mark. So yeah, you can imagine it looks beautiful there, and it really was, but you're not warm. Even then it was kind of like maybe 10 degrees, and as soon as the sun went down, it was below freezing very, very quickly. So you can certainly get caught out in that particular section. And then there's a couple of little passes before you drop down into Narin, but I mean, to be honest, they're pretty easy. And then you get some tarmac, which is quite nice. It's a road descent down into Narin, get your resupply. There's a hotel here. And then this next section, it's a long section, probably one of the longest ever without resupply. So if you look at the little orange dot, you've got Narin, and then you've got, I think it's about 400k, a big loop around the Arabelle plateau, and then dropping down to the next checkpoint, CP3. Now this section, you basically, it's an absolute classic. You're climbing out of Narin. It's gradually uphill the whole way. Can be pretty rough on the tracks with like stutter bumps, corrugations. These are the roads that people drive every day, so they can be in bad condition. It just depends. You might get lucky, they might have graded them. You might get unlucky, and it might just be soft gravel and bumps. And then you head into the Birkin Valley. Now this is just the classic Kyrgyzstan. It's beautiful up there. I'm really looking forward to getting back, if I'm honest. So the Birkin Valley looks a little bit like this. Now in 2023 we were descending, so riders would be coming up this way. So you can see the kind of terrain. It's 4x4 tracks. Not particularly difficult in terms of terrain, but again, it's Kyrgyzstan. You're high. You're potentially exposed. There's nowhere to hide if a storm comes in these valleys. So yeah, it's definitely one for taking all your rain gear, and you just got to be prepared. And I think that's the kind of overlying message about the Silk Road mountain race. And then you cross it's Arabelle Pass just up here. So this section, I did it sort of in the middle of the night in the dark in 2023. So I've not really seen it much. There's a lot of river crossings. I was going through the river crossings, descending, and then obviously getting my feet wet, and everything was freezing up. I had waterproof socks on, which I definitely recommend. The gears kind of freeze up because you get water in there. So yeah, it's tricky if you get caught out in the wrong place. And then this year we're doing this is a new section, a long section around the top, and I think this is another Suyak Pass. There's two Suyak passes. It's one of these big passes up here. I'm not sure about the terrain. I know there's a mine and stuff, and they're actually extending the road over to the Chinese border, so I think it's relatively well driven in sections. But yeah, lots of time at 3,000 meters again. So yeah, it's going to be tough. Exposure is going to be key here. You need to take 400 k's worth of food, so probably over 24 hours worth of food from Narin. So I guess the good tactics would be to try and time it so you get to Narin maybe in the evening, try and eat a meal in there's a hotel there, try and eat a meal there, stock up as much as you can, and then you need enough basically to get you 24 hours before dropping pretty much down to the lowest part of the course. So the checkpoint is, what's the name of the place? It's Tamga, just a little guest house here. I think this has been used on numerous Silk Road mountain races. A nice long descent down. It's kind of like a mining track. So there's plenty of trucks and 4x4s go down there, so it should be a fast descent, which will be pretty good off that valley, off that plateau, and you can feel pretty grim. I remember 2023 we came up Jerku Pass here, which I'll come on to in a second, and yeah, my world nearly ended up on this plateau. Just I was getting confused. This was early on in the race, so I hadn't been up to that high yet. Just under 4,000 meters that pass. So yeah, it was pretty grim, pretty intense. But as soon as you get down, you get the oxygen back in your lungs and your body, and you can recover pretty quick. So yeah, riders will be happy to get down here for sure. Potentially stay at the checkpoint. Certainly get a meal at the checkpoint after a long time without sort of proper food and resupply. And then there's Tosul Pass here. Now I'm looking forward to riding this. This is meant to be one of the most beautiful passes to ride in Kyrgyzstan. It's not one I've done before. Let me see if I can put the Google Man on there. Look at that. That's just classic Silk Road mountain race in Kyrgyzstan. The kind of terrain you're looking at. Incidentally, I suspect that the hiker bike up Suku in the first part of the race will probably be up a big valley like this with no path, whereby you probably may be able to cycle little bits, but you're most likely going to be pushing. So that's what I'm expecting. You can see the pass in the background there on Tosul. So riders will be climbing up here. Looks stunning. I mean, it looks stunning in the beautiful sunlight. Whether it's stunning when it's like 2 a.m. and you've camped halfway up it remains to be seen. So yeah, so that's Tosul. I'll see if I can find another little dot there. That's the same one. Oh, there we go. Look. So yeah, not too bad. This is kind of a pretty standard pass in Kyrgyzstan. But yeah, just winds on. Probably be three or so hours just riding uphill, taking in the scenery. Back up onto the plateau, high altitude again, but not for too long, and then descending Jerku Pass. Now I went up this in 2023, as I said. The top is, it's probably rideable if you're not halfway through the Silk Road mountain race and you're on a full-on mountain bike. This is a bit of an example. It's upside down. Sorry about that. But yeah, this section's kind of rideable, but then there's other sections which are just massive rockfall, which look a bit like this. Again, it's going to be tricky to ride down that. It could be different now, but these passes do tend to change, and you can see you're going all the way down the valley there. So I suspect you'll be on and off the bike at this top section. Definitely going to be easier going down than it was going up in 2023. And then the bottom section is quite rideable, and it'll be quite nice. And you're kind of like feeling like you've probably, you're getting towards the end of it then. Still a bit of way to go, but I'd say that sort of the real tough challenges have gone by then. Some good resupply down in this town at the bottom here. Got this section of road. So I rode this, basically most of the final of this race now was a start loop in 2023. So a bit of crisscrossing around here. There's opportunities to resupply. And then you've got this final loop. You're basically passing the finish and then coming back round on yourself. So this was the start loop in 2023 when I did it. Pretty simple riding up through here. Not much resupply. In 2023, when we went out to Enelchek here. So we came along, went down to Enelchek and then rode back. There's a border control post here. So you need to get a passport checked. You're not crossing a border, but it's just into a more secure area. And we have special permits to do this in the race. And then you've got this final pass, which is called Chon Ashu, which is up here. So touching on 4,000 meters again, not quite 4,000, but as good as. And I did this in 2023. There was a storm up there. Luckily, I didn't really get caught in the storm, but this was the result in the morning. So the camera's frozen up, but it's absolutely spectacular. This was the introduction to the Silk Road mountain race back in 2023. And this was as bad as it got that year. but it gives you an example of what can happen. And the lead riders rode through this overnight. I camped before the storm and ended up catching quite a few riders as well. It turned out that sort of sleeping was probably the sensible option. But yeah, snow can fall. It was a little bit muddy, but not too bad, but kind of frozen up there. I was wearing all my clothes. This was probably the coldest I was on the race. So yeah, just wrap up in everything, hope for the best. Put your warm gloves on, put your waterproof gloves on, put your waterproof trousers on, and your warm socks. But yeah, absolutely spectacular. So it's going to be a nice treat to finish this race, and yeah, I think riders will be pretty relieved by the time they get to this pass, and the work is pretty much then done. Then it's a case of just rolling back down. It's probably going to be 2-3 hours from the top of that pass, I would have thought. So we've got the descent will be 160. So yeah, 20-30 miles descent, and then probably a couple of hours just on the flat. Back to the finish in Karakol. So yeah, that is my preview of the 2025 Silk Road Mountain Race. As I said, I'll be out there myself. So give us a like and a subscribe, and there'll be plenty of videos about my bike, probably a video about the journey from Bishkek to Osh for the start as well. And yeah, thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.